This is Yuji, a trainer from Perth. The other day, I was asked a question about muscle soreness. Someone mentioned that since they don't have any muscle soreness, they might not be training properly. It seems like a common question, and I want to think through whether the absence of muscle soreness really means that the training isn't effective, or if it's something that should be present. First, let's consider what muscle soreness actually is. When do you usually experience muscle soreness? Well, usually when you try unfamiliar exercises or activities like doing something for the first time or something you've never done before, it can lead to muscle soreness. Also, when you do weight training with weights that are heavier than usual, even just increasing by about 2 kilograms can result in muscle soreness. This can be referred to as unfamiliar weight. It feels like there's a different stimulus than usual. Another point is that when you're doing weight training and you slowly lower the weight while resisting, that can also lead to muscle soreness. Ultimately, it all comes down to muscle soreness, which is like a small injury. For example, if you're doing a slow and controlled movement and it causes muscle soreness, it can feel extremely heavy. It's a strange situation. If suddenly you were to put 200 kilograms on it, you could end up with a muscle tear. If it tears that much, it would be a muscle strain, but it's more about the earlier stages of that. It's a matter of light damage. Well, when you try to exert force, there is a pulling force applied. This causes small injuries, and the pain you feel is generally said to be due to that. So, when people say that you won't build muscle unless you experience muscle soreness, they are referring to the fact that muscle damage is repaired with protein, which leads to growth. Therefore, if there is no such damage, if there is no muscle soreness, then repair won't occur and you won't grow. It's commonly said that without this, development won't happen and you won't improve your physique. Regarding whether one should experience muscle soreness, I think it's better to consider this separately for body shaping and sports. Body shaping is about improving our physique, which is essentially the same direction as bodybuilding. On the other hand, sports take a completely different approach. In sports, it is actually better not to experience muscle soreness after strength training. Experiencing muscle soreness means that you have placed a load on a specific muscle. Isn't it like focusing on just one aspect? In the case of sports, to be honest, when you do something like hitting, you might think that since there is a lot of power in this area, you should just target this part and work on it. However, this is a big mistake. When it comes to batting, you need to use your entire body, starting from your toes, in a coordinated movement. Ultimately, if your swing is fast, you can generate power towards the target. If you only train one muscle, it won't be effective. While you may become skilled at using one muscle, it doesn't mean you will become proficient at using your entire body. In sports, it's important not to focus solely on one area and apply pressure there. Such training is generally not advisable. Specifically, as mentioned earlier regarding negatives, only working on the lowering phase of resistance is usually unnecessary. Most sports, as we can see, involve using muscles that sell the bat, engaging the entire body to contract the muscles as a whole. When we talk about contraction, there are basically not many negative elements when using the muscles. For example, when throwing, there is a kind of braking action where the back stops the movement. But when it comes to moving something or moving oneself, it is generally more important for the muscle contraction to be strong. Therefore, it is better to focus on that, and the element of doing negatives is not really necessary in sports. However, in the case of body shaping, it is the complete opposite. There is a need to concentrate on just one area. Additionally, even with negatives, it is still important to utilize that. There are people who focus on targeting specific muscles in their training, so it's necessary to differentiate between body shaping and sports. For those who are training specifically for sports, it is better to use methods that avoid muscle soreness. By the way, there is Cristiano Ronaldo in soccer, right? He plays at a world-class level, but there's something oddly impressive about his performance in major competitions. That has nothing to do with soccer from last year. It's all about his own abilities. I think having well-developed pectoral muscles is important for becoming a promotional figure, but since soccer doesn't fundamentally require large pectoral muscles, there's really no need to train them that much. However, that's just a prediction about my job. Now, to return to the topic regarding whether muscle soreness is necessary for development, I believe that if there is muscle soreness, it definitely indicates that the training was effective. I think it certainly has an effect. But the question is, if there is no muscle soreness, does that mean there was no effect? That's the key point. Having muscle soreness is generally okay for bodybuilders. However, the absence of muscle soreness does not mean that the training was ineffective or that one was not good at it. This raises the question of whether one is actually training. First of all, muscle soreness can vary depending on the location and the muscle group involved. For example, if we compare the pectoral muscles and the back muscles, I think most people have experienced muscle soreness in the pectoral muscles. It is quite common to feel muscle soreness there. However, I don't really remember experiencing much muscle soreness in the deltoids, do you? I also rarely feel it. It's not that I never feel it, but it's more like I almost never do. You see, when training the pectoral muscles, the movement goes like this, right? Basically, it's this kind of motion. When you bring it back, the muscles are under tension. When they are stretched, well, when they contract, the load decreases because the elbows come in. Even if you are holding the same 20 kilograms when the muscles are stretched, the distance increases from here, so rather than just lowering the 20 kilograms and stretching the muscles, is the 20 kilograms moving further out. Since this distance is extending outward, the load is effectively doubled, creating a strong pulling force. This strength is present when the muscles are being stretched, which is mostly the case for pectoral muscle training. However, in the case of the shoulder deltoids, the muscles are indeed being stretched. It stretches all the way from here. When you reach around this area, you are stretching. However, there are hardly any exercises that put load on this area. Well, doing something a bit heavier from here presents quite a difficult problem, so there aren't many options. In the triangular trim, there are probably only 1 or 2 exercises out of 15 or 20 that fit this description, so not many. For example, in the case of this side raise, the load actually becomes weaker as you contract. It feels like it's stretching but getting weaker, and the shoulder press is not really in the stretching area to begin with. Maybe it's about halfway. It feels like there is load when the muscles are somewhat contracted, and even more so when they are fully contracted, but there isn't much load when they are stretched. Therefore, this type of training tends to not cause muscle soreness. In fact, for my shoulders, I only experience muscle soreness the day after training about once or twice out of 10 sessions. Even those 1 or 2 times, it happens when I really focus on the negative part of the movement. In those cases, it can be a bit different. It feels like I'm doing my best, but compared to the muscle soreness I get from training my chest, it's really not that much. However, even if my shoulders aren't as sore, I feel that they have developed to a level comparable to my chest. There are various areas and exercises in the body that are prone to muscle soreness. For instance, the chest is one such area. And then there's the triceps. Exercises like kickbacks or French presses tend to cause soreness in those muscles. Additionally, when you lower the weight, it creates a situation similar to the peak of tension, which can lead to significant muscle soreness. Then there's the hamstring area. When performing deadlifts, the hamstrings are under a lot of strain, especially when they are stretched, making them prone to soreness. It's not that they are extremely likely to get sore, but they can be somewhat susceptible. The same goes for the latissimus dorsi. During pull-ups, when you stretch in that position, muscle soreness can become more likely. In terms of fair training, we have really come this far and are in a situation where we are experiencing the most growth, although it may not be the peak of growth. There is a feeling of the arms expanding and being stretched further here, so it can be connected to some extent. Additionally, when squatting, the quadriceps experience increased load when bending down, but there isn't much load when standing and contracting. The load is stronger when stretching, and similarly, with leg exercises, sufficient load is applied when stretching. Well, that will be something to keep in mind. Recently, I've been doing Bulgarian split squats, and when you stretch like this, it's easy to get muscle soreness. Well, whether you do it well or not is also a factor, so it can be easy or hard to get sore. As I mentioned earlier, it's generally hard to avoid soreness completely. For example, with the triangle stretch, even after doing it for about 30 years, there are times when I don't feel sore at all. And as for abs, they don't usually get sore either. If it's your first time doing abs, or if you're doing something completely new, then there is definitely some stimulation. Basically, when doing sit-ups, you lie down and do them in a straight position, but with your back extended. Once you reach that point, you shouldn't engage your lower back. Essentially, you don't do sit-ups to that extent. That's why, at Hirao's place, the exercises that are performed don't really lead to muscle soreness in the abs. So, there are differences in that regard. However, that doesn't mean that the triangular bandage or abs won't develop. I feel the same way. For such individuals, it may be difficult to achieve muscle soreness even with exercises like triangle band and abdominal workouts. Therefore, the fact that development can occur even without muscle soreness has already been proven in the world. What is important is not the muscle soreness itself, nor the soreness felt the next day, but rather the sensation during the workout, It's about the feeling of contraction in the deltoids while performing the exercises. Are you able to focus your awareness on that contraction here rather than just in this area? When lowering the weight, it's important to feel if there is tension only in this area and to focus on the repeated contractions and the resistance during stretching. As long as there is a strong interval while doing these two, that's sufficient. There's no need to use muscle soreness as a barometer. If the sensations of contraction and stretching are strong while you're working out, that indicates there are elements for development. Therefore, please use your sensations at that moment as the primary barometer for whether it's effective for the muscles. While I mentioned that muscle soreness can be representative, to be honest, there are times when it becomes really intense and times when it doesn't happen much at all. I don't really understand this fluctuation. When I'm training, there are moments when I might not be fully focused, and I wonder if that's why I don't feel it as much. But then again, that's not always the case. Quite often, I train just like usual, staying sharp and focused. Earlier, I mentioned the feeling of soreness and stretching, and I really felt it while doing the exercises. However, there are times when I don't experience much muscle soreness. As I said, if you have that feeling, you will develop. That's fine, but when it comes to whether or not you get muscle soreness, there are days when some people feel it and others don't, even if they do the same routine. So, it might be that I wasn't focused or I was sleepy, which is why I didn't feel much soreness. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I feel sleepy and still experience soreness. Having experienced significant muscle soreness, I wonder if it was tougher because I was lifting the same weight while sleeping. It really becomes a confusing situation, and there is something quite mysterious about it. However, as I mentioned earlier, I focus solely on muscle soreness. The differences vary from day to day, so I won't be misled by that. Instead, I will concentrate on my contraction feeling while exercising and aim to stretch it out. If I can raise this level, my development will surely progress. Therefore, I must not overlook the form and load during the workout, and I need to be meticulous. By strengthening that sensation, your body will change significantly. So it's okay if you don't experience muscle soreness. If you do, that's fine too. But what's important is how you listen to your body during strength training. So focus on that. Please work hard to raise your level. Let's change our bodies even more in that way. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm also on Instagram, so please follow me. This was First Trainer YUJI.